Hey, what's up YouTube friend? Pallav here from nothingwired.com, and today we're talking about the brand new Canon Powershot G9X. This is the entry-level sibling, the smallest and the cheapest of all the GX series of cameras from Canon till now, and it also sports a 1-inch sensor. So you can say it's kind of, if you're on a budget, this could be the foray into the large sensor compact cameras in Canon. Now this one costs just under 33,000 Indian rupees in India, and that's the MRP I'm talking about. I think 32,999 or something. I could not find it online, so you might want to check out with a local vendor, or if you if you find it online that it's well and good, you might get some rebate on that price. But on Amazon.com in the US, it was selling for I think about $450, and then in the UK on Amazon.co.uk about just under 350 pounds, and then in Germany it was selling for I think about 435 euros. So that's how the price goes, and then makes it about $150 less in the US than the G7X, which is kind of just a higher camera than this one. So let's go ahead and check out the quick specs right here, and you'll see that it has a 1-inch sensor and the same 20.2 MP sensor that the G7X possesses. In fact, this is the stream down, or this is the stripped down version of the G7X. The main difference with the G7X would be the lens. We'll come back to that, and then the flash. The flash on the G7X was tiltable, not here. The LCD panel on the G7X was tiltable, and also the G7X was bulkier. So if you want a really pocketable camera, then G9X is the one. Now, apart from the 20.2 sensor, it also sports the same DZ6 processor that some of the other newer Canon cameras has, which has much better low light performance than the earlier DZ5 image processing engine. Apart from that, the main difference with the G7X is the lens. The G7X possesses an 18 to 100 mm f 1.8 to 2.8 lens in 35 mm equivalent, whereas the G9X has a 28 to 84 mm, but f2 till 4.9. So at the telephoto end, you get quite a slow lens. So that's the main difference between the G7X and the G9X. But that actually enabled Canon to make a camera. This is only 209 grams. It's almost featherweight, and I love carrying it in the in pocket. Some of my phones are close to that weight, so you can have the phone on one pocket and your camera on another. It's that portable. A thing of concern here is you would see that the minimum aperture goes to only f/11 and shutter speed 1/2000 seconds. So when in bright daylight, you might not get your photos might be already always overexposed because you cannot go down the aperture and the shutter speed enough. For that, Canon has built-in ND filters in this one, so that might help in situations. Once you open the box, on top you will find the paperwork, your warranty card, and a startup guide. I strongly suggest that you read the startup guide. That will help you understand the camera greatly. Once you go in, you'll find the camera body, you'll find a 1250 mAh battery and lanyard and your external charger. So that's the Canon Powershot G9X, and you can see it's a very compact camera here. We're talking a very thin metal sheet covering the whole camera, and instead of a rubber, you have this almost leatherite plastic kind of a cover on places where you'd hold the camera. There's absolutely no grip here, but that's expected from this compact camera, such a compact camera. Now it comes in two colors. We have the black one, which is the uglier one. The other one has silver, and then in this leatherite portion you have beige. So that looks much sexier, and if you want to show off your camera, definitely that's the one to go. But this is more stealthy, I guess. It's very pocketable. It's absolutely handheld, fits nicely into my palm. So in front you have the 3x IS lens. It's optically stabilized. It says 10.2 till 30.6 mm. So it's a 1-inch sensor. So you just multiply 2.7 here and you get the 35 mm equivalent. So that's, as I told you before, about 28 till about 83, 84 mm. and aperture 1 by 2.0 till 4.9. You get the autofocus assist lens. On top you have the mode dial on the rightmost part, and then the usual set of zoom and the shutter release button, and then power button, the playback button here. Now this is at an unusual position. I'm generally used to having the playback button on the back side, so I keep on forgetting. But then once you get used to it, if you only have these cameras, we keep on shuffling between cameras, I at least. So if you have this camera for a long period of time, then you might get used to it. And then you have the pop-up flash, and you can simply slide that button to pop out the flash. Now, as I told you before, this cannot be tiltable like the one on the G9X, and it's not very powerful as well. On the back side, you have a large touchscreen that takes most of the space, and you'll see the absence of any forward dial or any rotatable dial out there. There are only 4 buttons: the movie recording button, the quick setting button, menu, and the info button. So most of the functions that you would do, like setting or aperture or shutter speed or even ISO and exposure settings, would be via the touchscreen. Now talking about the touchscreen, it's a great touchscreen. It's a 480p touchscreen, but it's a capacitive touchscreen. Great touch response. I absolutely love Canon's touchscreens. You can in fact also touch to focus and capture, and that's just one of the function of the touchscreen. However, unfortunately, this is not tiltable, as you can see. So for the selfie fans, this is gonna be a disappointment. You'll have to use an app on your phone to be able to take selfies. But there is a lens collar here. Now, whenever you do not always have to use the touchscreen, let's say you're on an aperture mode. So instead of going on a touchscreen and touch the aperture and then changing it, you can use the lens collar to change the aperture. It's very smooth and it's clicky, so you exactly know how many clicks or how many stops you went when you're not looking at the camera. That's one good thing. There are some lens collars that are very smoother than this, but they are not clicky, so they do not have grooves according to the aperture stops. I like those, but then I would not know how many aperture stops it had gone if I'm not looking at the viewfinder or at the LCD. But this I exactly know. So that's one of the advantages, and for some that could be the disadvantage as well. What else? On the right you have the micro HDMI port and then a data transfer port. So no external mic jack, no sound monitoring, of course. On the left side you have touch connectivity button. Below you have space for the tripod collar, and then your 1250 mAh battery and the SD card slot. The usual area of button and controls, but the touchscreen takes up most of the backspace, and you really have to get used to a touchscreen if you're coming from a camera where you're used to all dials and rotatable dials and kind of stuff. There are also no FN button I've seen here. I like the user interface and the menu layout largely, but then I would have liked the menu to be categorized, or there should have been more tabs around there. Images and videos, there should have been at least different tabs for the video. That's what I feel, because I need to keep going inside the same image control menu to find the video resolution and those kind of stuff. However, the display shows enough information provided you toggle that settings. And on the right side you have the quick settings on the touchscreen I'm talking about, and you also have settings where you can quickly toggle between the shutter speed and the aperture when you're full manual mode. That's really handy, but then that takes your eyes off from the subject, remember. And there are no way, because there aren't any dial apart from the lens collar, you cannot change the aperture and the shutter speed via dials when in full manual mode. You have to take your eyes off and press that particular button that changes the aperture and the shutter speed, and then you can change that particular one with the lens collar here. So that's a slight disadvantage, I would say. For some, that may be a game changer. You can also touch to focus and touch to take, and then you can quickly toggle between the autofocus and the manual focus mode. The leftmost is the shutter speed, then the aperture, then the exposure compensation scale, and then the ISO auto. So you can almost toggle all of these in full manual mode, and then in respective mode. You can change whatever it is changeable. However, there's a trick here. You can, because this supports RAW, you can shoot in RAW plus JPEG or only RAW or only JPEG in the semi-automatic modes. But when you go to full automatic mode, or maybe the creative auto mode, or maybe the scene modes, only JPEG is available. I don't know why, but that's the way it is. Probably because the camera automatically processes that. The camera does not see a need for you to use a RAW file. Now coming to the video mode, it supports max of 1080p at 60 fps, so no 4K like the RX 104, but that costs 2.5 times this camera, so forget about that territory. So full HD at 60 fps would be enough for most of your video shooting capability. In fact, I don't even shoot at 60 fps. This particular video is being shot at 30 fps in full HD. So for most situations, you would need a 30 fps, but then when you want to record smooth movement, then you might need the full HD 60 fps video recording. Another thing is about the video setting is when you're in the video mode, by default it's in the standard mode where you can only change the exposure compensation scale. I've seen some of the review videos where they say that you cannot change anything, you cannot change much in the video mode, you don't have many manual controls. That's absolutely wrong, guys. You just need to go to the menu and change the record mode to manual. Once you do that, you can change your shutter speed, you can change your aperture, you can change your ISO, you can change your exposure compensation scale, almost anything that you otherwise can do in the full manual still mode as well. In fact, not only that, whenever you're changing this, you can change, number one, you can change the aperture, shutter speed, ISOs during recording as well. And not only that, during recording also, whenever you change this, you can see the preview and even before recording. So that's a great deal. I absolutely love the manual mode in video. You can also manually focus during video mode. So I absolutely love this setting in the video mode. I really thank for Canon to give this many manual focus controls in video. Now let's talk about some performance. Focus speed and accuracy, decently fast focus locking speed and absolutely accurate. Obviously, the minimum focusing distance at tele end is slightly more than at the wide end, but it also is that bit sharper. Now talking about the sharpness, half a shade softer than I would have liked the JPEGs are at least, but that very easily can be increased in Lightroom. So that's why we recommend that you shoot in RAW as much as possible. As far as details is concerned, you get more than what you pay for. I often need very minimal sharpness increase in post, which generally is the case with the RAW files anyway. They're a shade or two paler than the JPEGs generally for all cameras. What really impressed me is the detail under low light. The D6 processor is doing an excellent job here. You of course get noise, and we'll talk about the ISO performance a little later, but the detail level is incredible under any light. Color accuracy is good and natural. Saturation and hue are also more towards natural. The skin tone is accurate but not warm though. That's something to take note of and subjective. The dynamic range is good and much better than that of the D6 5. Good news for those. But make sure that you shoot in RAW for maximum flexibility. The JPEG shows quite a bit of details in shadow areas. RAW files are generally a shade softer, as I told you before, which is expected. The JPEGs do not overprocess the RAW file under any condition like some of those Sony cameras do. Damn good ISO performance for one in sensor. I could go up to ISO 800 for totally clean image. ISO 1600 and even 3200 are perfectly web uploadable. You would need noise reduction in post-processing at 6400 and 12800 is totally grand. White balance for most part is accurate, but I personally like slightly warmer tone that the camera gives, specifically when it comes to the skin tone, but again that's subjective. It's easier to bring in bokeh at the wide end, mainly because of that very large f/2.0 aperture and a better minimum focusing distance. Although the bokeh are not completely round, they're creamy enough to blend beautifully with the background. There are no barrel or pincushion distortion at any point. The camera processes the JPEGs fair as far as vignetting is concerned. There was more vignetting at f/4 than f/2, surprisingly. But beyond that, things get cleared up quite fast. At the tele end, we see slightly prominent vignetting, specifically at the top corners, at f by 5.6, but again by f by 8 is totally gone. The camera is generally free from any kind of ghosting. You really need to try hard to get some light. Me in this case where I was shooting right at the lamppost. Videos are softer than I would have liked, more so towards the edges. There are no 4K video definitely. The continuous autofocus during video is quite inconsistent and sometimes it would not lock on the subject in the foreground. But thankfully the touchscreen lets you touch and focus quite conveniently. Overall, I'm very impressed with the performance of the camera out here. So then guys, would you buy this little baby, the G9X? Now let's talk about the pros. The main pros of this camera are that it's absolutely pocketable. It has a very thin metal body, but fine metal body at least. And 1-inch sensor, great low light performance, a touchscreen, supports RAW and great manual settings in video. The con should be mainly is the lens. It's a slower lens than the G7X, which is only $150 more than this about. And also it does not cover as many focal range as, let's say, the G7X. That's one thing. Number two is that it does not have provision to use an optional viewfinder. So obviously you're using the LCD, the battery life will be shorter than optimal. And then you also have almost no secondary dial. I wanted a secondary dial so that in full manual mode, I can use two dials to change the aperture and the shutter speed without looking at the LCD screen and toggling that particular point from the LCD screen. Another thing is that the flash is not tiltable. So those are the pros and cons. Now talking about whether you should get this camera. If I can afford that about $150 extra, which would differ depending on different markets, I would get the G7X mainly because of two reasons. Mainly because of the lens here. The lens is much faster and also covers more focal range. That's a 24 to 100 mm compared to a 28 till 84, and also that's much faster. The aperture is 1.8 till 2.8, where this one is 2 till 4.9. So definitely the G7X, if I can get that, mainly if you want to shoot people or portraits as well. But if you do not shoot portrait much, if you want to shoot buildings or landscape or in general street photography, where you do not want great bokeh and all this kind of stuff, then this lens also would suffice. And why I would buy this one over the G7X? Number one is because I do not have that extra $150. Number two is that I want a camera that's absolutely pocketable. There's not much difference between the G7X and the G9X, but the difference is huge when it comes to your jeans pocket. Mainly the G7X cannot be cannot be pocketable. You would still need a small bag possibly to carry that. But if you want this one on one of your jeans pockets, then the G9X. Also, the lens is not tiltable. That's one of the advantages of the G7X. But again, that does away with one more part that can be easily screwed. So main reason for buying the G9X would be that extreme pocketable feature and that $150 difference, which could be significant for some, specifically if you're just starting out on a large sensor camera. So that's the Powershot G9X, guys. If you like this video, please hit the like button, ask anything related to this, and we'll try to answer them all. And please subscribe to our channel and share this video to share the love. Thank you.